finish time was 4:53 instead of the 3 hours and 10 minutes that it would have taken to qualify. So we missed it by 103 minutes, which is like 4 minutes per mile. And
so you were really close to what you're saying.
Exactly.
Hey, Empowered Vegan Lifers, Ella here, and I cannot wait to share today's episode with you because I sat down with New York Times bestselling author Matt Frazier, the founder of No Meat Athlete. And I actually met Matt in person a few years ago on the Holistic Holiday at Sea Vegan Cruise. And he actually lives in North Carolina, my home state. He lives in Charlotte, North Carolina right now with his 2 plant-based athletic kids and rescued dog and cat. I'm going to put his full bio in the show notes, but to tell you a little bit more about him, if you don't already know, because he is very popular in this realm. Matt Frazier is the New York Times bestselling author with Robert Cheeke of The Plant-Based Athlete. That's their newest phenomenal book, which we cover quite a bit in this episode. He's also a vegan ultramarathoner, author, and entrepreneur, best known as the founder of the No Meat Athlete movement and host of the No Meat Athlete radio podcast. Matt's books have sold over 150,000 copies in 5 languages, and he and his work have been featured in books including Rich Roll's Finding Ultra, Brendan Brazier's Thrive Foods, Kathy Freston's Clean Protein. The list goes on, you guys. I'm not going to read them all out. They will be in the show notes. He's also been in many magazines, including Runner's World, Trail Run, Outside Magazine, Huffington Post, Forbes. Again, the list goes on. So this episode, we get to cover so much ground, and I really got to know Matt a lot better in this episode, which really was great because we're going to stay in touch a little better than we have been. We cover everything from what life and nutrition and fitness looks like after the age of 40. Matt just turned 40 this past year. Him and I and Robert are all really about the same age. I turned 41 this year. We talk about willpower. We talk about effective animal advocacy. Of course, we cover the book and all that's in the book because it's such a well-rounded kind of, you could call it a Bible or a manual for plant-based athletes. And there's something in there for everybody, which is another thing I love about it. So I'm going to stop talking now, and I'm going to just let us dive right into this episode. Enjoy it. Hey, Matt, welcome to the show. Thanks for being on.
Thanks so much. It's my pleasure, and appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. So you're in Charlotte now.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's right.
Do you know I'm from Chapel Hill?
No, I did not know that.
Yep. Born and raised
Wow.
Chapel Hill, North Carolina, till I was 18. Then I went to UNC Wilmington for college, and then headed down to Florida.
Cool. I was just in Wilmington last weekend for a futsal tournament, indoor soccer tournament for my kids.
Nice.
Happened to be in Wilmington, went to the beach. It was cool. It was my first time being there.
Ah, yeah, I love Wilmington. It's a great spot, but Asheville is beautiful too.
Yes, it sure is.
Yeah,
definitely.
And you're not far from me right now. I'm at the sanctuary we have. You're going to have to come visit sometime. We've opened a farm sanctuary in Virginia.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
We're neighbors.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, I'm super excited to talk about a lot of things today, Matt, but of course, your new book, The Plant-Based Athlete, is getting, just massive success already. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been, I don't want to say unexpected because Robert, my co-author, and I both had very high hopes for it. But it sure feels a lot different to see this one, the way it has been received compared to previous books, which were successful in their own right, but just on a different level. And it's been really, really neat to see this. I think the time is just right. As much as I think that we did a great job with this book, the timing really was perfect. This movement has grown so much in the 12 years since I've been doing it, for sure. But especially like the past 5, it's just plant-based and fitness, they go together now, whereas they used to be this almost like this oxymoron.
Yeah, absolutely. I think about, when I think of my own life, I think of like different chapters in my life. If you're considering your life in chapters, do you feel like this is starting a new chapter, or is this a continuation?
Yeah, this really is a new chapter. It's funny you should mention that because I just turned 40 in December, so about 7 months ago.
Mhm.
And when I hit that point, we didn't know if the book would be successful. I knew we had written a great book, but it's like my health, because after COVID, like a lot of people, I just had kind of lost sight of some important habits. I was eating a lot of rich, fun food to make that I was loving during the COVID time with the family and all that, but
Mhm.
I really just stopped caring so much about fitness. I don't know, just didn't really know where I was. So when I turned 40, something about it made me for the first time think like longer term. Usually I'm all about like 1 year goals and I don't really have the patience to think beyond that. But somehow when I turned 40, I was like, wow, like I'm not that thrilled with, given that I'm like a fitness guy and my job is to do this health thing. Like I'm not that thrilled with how where I've let myself get. And so I thought, I would love for when I turn 50 to feel entirely different. Like, what if I could feel like I was in the very best shape of my life at that point? And that was really the first time I've thought like 10 years down the road. So I guess as I've gotten older, like that for sure is a new chapter, just needing to think differently about health and fitness. It's kind of it can't be the priority it once was for me because I have kids now and that's really the priority. But yeah, it just, I don't know. It's like, it has felt like a new beginning. And then having this book come out, do what it did, do what it has done. I mean, still doing it. I don't know. It definitely feels like a cool chance to like, what's next. It's really exciting to think about what is next. I don't know yet. But it's just cool to be thinking on this longer time horizon than I've ever really thought before.
Oh, that's so interesting. I think you and Robert are about the same age. I've turned 41 last month.
Okay.
So last year was my big
age.
blowout 40 during the middle of COVID when I couldn't go to the concert that I had tickets for. But anyway,
Yeah.
I'll make up for it. But yeah, no, I kind of feel the same way. Is just shifting how I'm seeing the things that I'm doing on a regular basis and what the results are, shifting from like what are the very short-term results and then what is long-term and longevity. Yeah. So I totally get that. Well, I want to come back to this chapter, but I do want for our listeners, and we've got a really wide range of listeners, but generally the clients we work with are between about 40 and 55-year-old and usually women. So that's a lot of our audience. But that being said, I'd love to just kind of start at chapter 1 with you and kind of talk about you and your upbringing and how you got to the No Meat Athlete blog.
Sure. So I guess the first 20 years of my life or so didn't really do anything that would indicate that I would kind of go down this path. It was just the very standard American diet upbringing. And standard American, childhood. Like I did sports like a lot of kids did. I was never all that great. I was a pretty good athlete, but like one of the, above average player on different sports teams and things like that. But just, never thought sports would become, or fitness would become like a focus of my life by any means. And I actually really hated running when I was a kid. That was an interesting thing, is that the gym class mile run day, I just dreaded it and I hated it. And it was like the only time I would run in the whole year, really. And I'd have to run a mile and it would seem like forever. And I would always go too fast at the beginning because you were sort of being timed and it felt like a race. And I just hated it. And I would quit. I even quit some sports teams where the running was just too much. And I just didn't like to run. It did not feel good to me. And so when I got in college, some friends and I started working out, which was itself kind of new for me to think about going to the gym and just trying to get myself in shape, not for any sport, just to do it. And we one day, like I forget when, after maybe 6 months of doing this and kind of noticing some improvements, we were like, wow, like we should try to run a marathon because that would lose some fat. And we're like, why not? Not knowing anything about running, not knowing how hard it was. And more than that, we said like, well, like, let's do that, but let's also qualify for the Boston Marathon when we run this first marathon, which also very naive thing to do, because the mile pace for that at that time was 7:15, and that was like how fast I could run a single mile. Probably it was not a marathon pace by any means, but I thought, okay, well, like with 6 months of training, surely I could just sort of learn to keep doing that. But anyway, so we did end up running this marathon, and hobbled across the finish line, and the finish time was 4:53 instead of the 3 hours and 10 minutes that it would have taken to qualify. So we missed it by 103 minutes, which is like 4 minutes per mile. And
so you were really close, is what you're saying.
Exactly. But I don't know, somehow like failing that badly at something, it's interesting. This has not happened to me before, but I just failing that much. It was kind of, I felt like this was a success still, that I finished a marathon and I was, 21 or whatever. And it just seemed cool. But in the back of my mind, it was like, wow, like while I succeeded at that, I completely failed at this other goal of mine. And I had told people I was going to do this and bet people money that one day I could qualify for Boston. So like to miss it by that much, it just felt like, I don't know, it was like unfinished business. Like I had to at least get back and run another marathon, like run the whole way, finish strong. And in the back of my mind, I was like, maybe I could still qualify for Boston. So it turned out to be this long thing, 7-year journey to get there. And I had to learn how to run to not be injured, because that was the big thing. I was getting injured all the time. And then learn how to actually like run and train and structure a training program. And then I started to focus on nutrition and stuff like that. And only then, after I had, I guess, 6 years into this journey, and I'd taken 90 minutes off my marathon time with all those things, I got this like unrelated personal ethical urge to become vegetarian, not vegan. Didn't know what vegan was or anything. And I just said, I'm going to do this. Like, it's important enough to me. I don't know if I'm going to qualify for Boston, because even though I've taken 90 minutes off my time, it's like, I don't know where I'm going to get 10 or 13 more minutes or whatever it was I had to get off. Because it was like, I'd done everything I knew to do. So I didn't know where I was going to get 13 more minutes. And I just said, okay, I'm just going to do this thing. I'm going to go vegetarian. It might screw up the training. And if it does, then, so be it. And then I'll assess after that whether I want to keep doing it or what. Mm-hmm. But I looked around for information online. This was 2009 now. And I was just looking for like the basic stuff, like the protein question, of course. And like, can you even be a vegetarian marathon runner? Because back then, I mean, it was so different 12 years ago. There were people who were doing it, plenty of them, especially in the ultra running scene. Scott Jurek was dominating, and in the bad water, like there were vegetarian and vegan runners who were using a plant-based diet basically as a performance tool. But I didn't know that, and it wasn't public. I mean, that kind of information just wasn't out there. Yeah. So I looked around. I couldn't find anything on the internet. Nobody was blogging about it. There was a few little websites that were urging you to become vegetarian or vegan for your health and for even claiming you could improve your sports performance, and citing a few obscure athletes or questionable claims about whether athletes even were vegetarian, but they would claim that they were. And it never didn't feel like anything that I could trust at all. The information, it was like it was clearly with an agenda to make me go vegetarian or vegan, and it wasn't really science backed. Like I said, just lots of claims that were questionable, and I don't know, I just didn't trust it at all. And I thought like it would be really cool if there was a site that was just honest and upfront and wasn't about trying to convert you, because I wasn't invested in I just wanted to do it for myself. I wasn't out to change anybody. And so I said, I'm just going to start my thing. I'm going to start, I know a lot about cooking and nutrition and all this, and I'm going to just apply that all now with a vegetarian approach. And I'm just going to write about how it goes. And so I started this website, No Meat Athlete. Actually, back then it was nomeatathlete.wordpress.com. I got the WordPress blog of it. And I just started, putting up what I was doing and what I was eating and how the workouts were going and all this stuff. And then the shocking to me surprise was that 6 months after that, I qualified for the Boston, achieved this huge dream of mine. And I was able to do it because I trained so hard that summer and I didn't get injured. Like I had trained harder than I ever had, or perhaps the same hard as I ever had, but I was able to keep doing it. Whereas every time in the past when I would train like that, at these paces that I would need to hit to be anywhere near qualifying for Boston, I would get injured. It would always happen. It was inevitable that within a month I'd be dealing with big running injuries. And this is what running is for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. It causes a lot of injuries. But for me, so much changed when I started eating this just vegetarian diet. And then that's how I learned about, with the blog and all that, I started to learn about people who were doing it. And Brendan Brazier, his stuff was out there. I just hadn't found it. Mm-hmm. So I learned about his stuff. I learned about Robert Cheeke, my co-author, Scott Jurek, all these people who were now using this, not just vegetarian, but vegan diet. And many of them saying it actually helped their performance. So that's when I said, wow, like I could actually go further with this. I could become completely vegan. And after having qualified for Boston, now I was interested in ultra running. So I got into 50-mile races and 100-miler. And I did these, fully vegan. And then that was 2013. And then now it's 8 years later, I guess. And our community has grown. I've kind of gone through my own little ups and downs with fitness and motivation, like I was mentioning earlier. But it's been really cool for sure to be part of this movement and to see this community of ours, the No Meat Athlete community, grow in the way that it has, because I just love the mindset that the people in it bring to it. It's this welcoming approach. It's not about trying to convert people. It's just sort of like meet you where you are. If you want to come to a run with us, because we have some groups around the country and even the world, and it's like, if you want to come, like, you don't have to be vegetarian. We're not going to preach to you about how you, I mean, some people still do, but that's not what we're about. And I don't know, I'm just really happy with the way that our community spreads this message. And because I think that's, as much as I think the kind of the militant vegan, the person who will demonstrate and protest and hand out leaflets, that person is important for the visibility for sure. And that even played a part in my going vegetarian. But I think this, where we are now, with it kind of reaching this mainstream level that we have, I think the gains to be made are from this approach that is like just kind of more down to earth, like honestly more normal, that people can look at and say, that is not that different from how I currently eat or how I currently think. I can make a shift like that. And I think that's kind of where the next, bunch of change is going to come from. So I'm very, very excited to be part of it. And yeah, and then this book, I partnered with Robert, my friend, who I had met 10 years prior, probably maybe 11 years prior. And he came to me a couple years ago and said, like, let's write the book. We've both written our books. Everyone in this movement has written their own version of their plant-based fitness story, but let's write the one that aggregates lots and lots of stories. And it's not just from us. It's from top, Olympians, pros, elites, people at the very top of their sport. And let's find out what they do and let's share that. And that's how the plant-based athlete was born.
I love this. And I want to ask a question, and I love the direction you're going. And I want to get to that too, in terms of effective advocacy. But you mentioned that there was something that kind of turned you vegetarian, or what was it? Was it an article? Was it an image? What was it?
Mostly it was a pet. It was, I had gotten a dog after I got out of college. And then when I moved in with my now wife, we bought a dog for ourselves because we both loved animals. And I think I'd had a dog when I was a kid, but only one. And somehow with this one, as an adult, this being my dog, not like the family dog, I just connected in a way that I had never with any animal. And I was into cooking at the time. I really have, and still enjoy cooking a lot. And I was all into, the meat cooking and the bacon and everything and all that. And at some point it just hit me. I don't know when it was. Perhaps it was when I got a leaflet, because I was in grad school and I got a leaflet on campus. I remember that I kind of kept and just didn't want to throw away, because it's something about it moved me, like seeing these pictures of animals suffering, which was very sad, but it just made me think. It was like, wow, like I love this dog so much, and yet I'm cooking and eating these pigs that are like, as far as thinking and thoughts and feelings go, they're more or less equivalent to dogs in that way. And it was like, how can that be consistent? Like, how can I do both of those things? And so that was it. I was reading books about consciousness and things like that, just kind of as an interest. I was into math and artificial intelligence stuff in school that I was studying, and I was reading books about that. And somehow at some point it just hit me. I was like, wow, like these animals, they don't deserve to be treated differently really than I would treat a person. I mean, maybe differently, but not eaten, basically. And that's what it was. It just kind of ate at me, and I just couldn't, like, I planned not to do anything about it. I just saw the pamphlet and I was like, I don't know, just let it go. I'm too interested in cooking. Couldn't imagine what this would do to my, social life and all this stuff, but I just couldn't forget it. It just kept kind of going to me. So then I decided to, and I skipped over this part in the story, but I tried to gradually do it. And in a way that would still allow me to keep the protein and keep the things that I thought I needed for energy. So I said, I'm not going to eat 4-legged animals. That's like my new thing. I'm not going to eat cows or pigs, because those are the ones that to me at the time were like the ones that were most like a dog, most like an animal that I respected and loved. And so I did that for a whole year, and it was fine. And then I said, I can go further with this. Speaking of dogs. And that's when I cut out the 2-legged animals and said, I'll just keep fish in the diet. And then eventually I was loving how I felt. So I was like, wow, I'll go all the way. So that was the progression. And it was, I don't know, just largely ethical. And it turned out that the performance benefit was such a huge, great surprise, which is so cool about this diet. Like you do it for one reason, and then you find out there's 4 other huge reasons, like why it's really great. So that's how it went.
Yeah, because most people, the majority of people get there from the health aspect, right? Sure. But most people also do have a relationship with an animal, usually a dog or a cat. What do you think it is? And I'm just so interested and intrigued with the psychology behind it that allowed you to make that connection, and that other people maybe don't, even if they love their dog just as much. Do you have any thoughts on that, just from being around people?
I honestly think it was the reading of books about consciousness, and it's just this genuine curiosity and like, what does it mean to exist and be sentient and like feel things and like, understand that that you yourself are like this ability to self-reflect basically. And I guess the conclusion I kind of eventually drew was that and this is, some people, if you're a religious person, then this won't resonate with you. But I never really was that religious of a person. I was kind of raised with that, but I just didn't ever really take for me. And so the conclusion I ultimately came to was like, humans are more advanced, more evolved in this cognitive sense than many animals, but that there's not a fundamental difference. Like, there's not some line that says, here's the better things and here's the lower or worse things. It was just that, like, it's just a matter of degree. Just humans are just more evolved, but it's not like there's something that says we've been given this gift of like specialness, that therefore we're the ones that can eat these other things, and we shouldn't have to make sacrifices for these other things. So I just sort of, I don't know, just somehow that enabled me to view them as sort of on the same plane as us. It's just that we have, obviously a more evolved cognitive ability. So I think that's what it was. I just kind of some deep thinking and reading about what it means to be conscious, and understand that animals have certainly a degree of consciousness and sense of self. And that's probably why I started the way I did. I picked the animals that to me had the most developed sense of self. The ones that could imagine, they don't look in the mirror, but that they can understand that there is an I in their universe that is them. Not in the same way that we do, but there is one. Which, and that's different probably from like a crustacean or an insect, where they're kind of following programs and they're responding to impulses. And I don't know if they think of themselves as an I, or are they just responding to a signal that says this is painful, therefore move away. Doesn't mean that I would eat those, because I haven't decided that I should. And there's a nice easy line between animals and plants, and that's where my line is. But yeah, I think that's kind of why I did it in the phases that I did.
Yeah, super interesting. Okay, so you've got the blog and you're just kind of sharing, it sounds like, just sharing your journey, and people are attracted to this. I've seen you grow over these years. I get your newsletter as well, and I just love the tone of it. It's so personal. It's so just you, like being you and talking. So I just love that. So I hope everybody will subscribe to your newsletter. But you've just really kind of grown this following now, and it's branched out. What does No Meat Athlete mean to you now, and what does it look like?
So like in the early days, it was me just writing about kind of what I was doing. And like, I didn't know anything about blogging. I didn't read any blogs or anything. I just wanted to start journaling what I was doing. It was a journal for training and food. And then I started to shift, especially after I qualified for Boston. People started to want to know, like, they weren't just curious, like, what I was doing as like for entertainment. It was more like, how did you get this result, and what can I learn from it? So at that point, to me, the content kind of shifted to more like, me. I certainly wasn't an expert by any means in plant-based nutrition or running, but I had individual success. So it started to become me sharing what had worked and what I knew. And, I was able to kind of assume this posture of confidence, which wasn't easy to do. But as I got to know more and more people, and I started to interview, Brendan Frazier on my blog, like, it just gave me some sense that, like, I really did have information that people would want to learn from. So it took a while to kind of step into that. But eventually I said, like, I can write an article that says, 10 ways to do this better, and own that, and be confident enough to, like, give advice. And so that's what it became. And that's still kind of what it is. And we have a lot more guest authors than me now. Because about 5 or 6 years in, I don't know, I just realized that it was so limited if it was just about me. As much fun as it kind of was, I don't know, I realized, first of all, that like, it wasn't good for me on a personal level to be the center of it. It just led to too much stuff. Like, it was fun and exciting and cool to, like, have a book and go on a book tour and have people line up for photos and get their book signed. Like, it was amazing and a rush to have that happen. But then once it was done, it was like, I don't know, I just could only imagine how to do bigger and better of that. And then I would compare myself to other people, and I just realized it was not going to go down a good road. It wouldn't ultimately ever make me happy. It would always be about more, and like, well, like, I did that, what can I do that's better than that? And never actually, like, reaching the place where you say, wow, now I've made it. Now I can just be satisfied and fulfilled by my work. And so I kind of realized that like I had to take the step of getting myself out of it and making the site something that didn't depend on me at all. And also if I ever wanted to stop doing it, which who knows, maybe I will, not to stop being vegan, but like to stop doing the site. If I was the center of it, I'd have, I wouldn't want my family's income to be shut off because I could no longer felt like writing about running and food. So it was important to me to kind of make it about other people. And that's what it was meant to be. When I called it No Meat Athlete in the early days, like I wasn't a no meat athlete. I was still eating fish. I was like on my way to this thing. And I had not done anything that would say I'm the authority in this. The name was to be like for no meat athletes, to just give a name to this movement. But a lot of people sort of interpreted it as me as the no meat athlete. And I never really was comfortable with that. So anyway, nowadays it's much more about guest authors. Like I said, we had the running groups, which to me, that was a cool thing. It's not been quite as what I hoped. Like it's been very hard to sustain interest from running groups all around the world and country. And I wish we would have kind of started in a smaller fashion with that, just started in a few and focused on how to really grow them. But they are still going. And some of them, like probably 10 of them are still going really strongly. But what I love about those is like, it has nothing to do with me, and people in those groups often don't even know anything about who I am, but they still go to their No Meat Athlete group, and their local leader is like the person who to them is their North Star in the No Meat Athlete world. And I just think that is so cool to like that it can spread in that way. And so really what that's saying is me as one person I think I would extremely limit what the blog can be, because I only do a couple little sports and I'm not a pro or an elite at any of them. So like my vision for it is to get even more voices from like the people like we interviewed in the book, to get many more of those voices in there who can really speak from a place of authority and credibility about their sports and how they feel it with a plant-based diet. So that's what we are now. We have a sister company called Complement that makes like sort of mindful, I think of them as mindful supplements for plant-based people, which is to say supplementation, just kind of what you need and none of the stuff that you don't. Because when you go plant-based, I realized eventually that there are a few things that you need, and there's this thing about veganism is like everyone says, well, how can it be a good diet if it has to be supplemented? But to me, like I take way fewer supplements now. There are a few critical ones that I need to make sure I get, but I don't take a full multivitamin with 25 things in it anymore because I don't feel like I need that. I get all that from my food except for like 5 things, and those are what I supplement with. So that's kind of another project that I really like, and that's kind of like I said, a sister brand to No Meat Athlete.
Well, that's grown significantly too. I'm a Complement user. I got
awesome
essentials, and
cool.
I love that you have different forms of it too, with the liquid and then the spray and then the bites you had. It's super cool. Super cool.
Yeah, we just try to make stuff that I don't think that we would use. Like that's the Complement came about because I was tired of combining 5 different bottles, going to the store and buying 5 things, and it was like, why don't I just put them all in one? So we just keep making things as we find niche for them, and that's how we've arrived at these different formulas.
Amazing. Okay, so where did the supplement? When did that start?
That was 2017 is when that one launched.
2017. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. And speaking of, you said I'm not, the best at any one sport. You're a runner, obviously. What now, going into your 40s? What's your workout like now, or what do you plan to use as a workout routine now?
Yeah, well, I'm very proud to say that like a week before my 40th birthday, I bought a book. I don't know why I did this, but I bought a book about kettlebell training. I was browsing Amazon. I don't remember if I was looking for this or what, but I just found that, and it was called Simple and Sinister, and it's by this guy named Pavel Tsatsouline, who's like used to be a Russian special forces, fitness guy. And it's just like something about this. It was like the end of the COVID period. I mean, hopefully the end of it. It was December, and it was like, seemed like it was winding down. It was like, I just hadn't done anything, but I still wasn't ready to go back to a gym and do all that yet. And I thought, wow, like a kettlebell, if I just had to have 1 or 2 kettlebells and that's what I need, I don't need to build a whole home gym. I could just have that stuff. And like, I don't know, something about the simplicity of it. And especially this book, it's literally 2 exercises and you just do them every single day. You take a day off now and then when you need it. But I started that 7 months ago, and it takes like 25 to 35 minutes per day. And it's just been so good. I've just loved it. I've gotten so much stronger. I started out with a 35-pound kettlebell. And that was literally all I could do. And 2 days ago, I ordered my next step up from where I am now, which is I got an 80-pound kettlebell. And like, it's such a huge difference. I feel so much stronger. I don't know if I'm stronger than I was in college. I don't think I have the endurance I did when I was running marathon stuff, but I have a much higher level of strength for sure. And I even think maybe not endurance, but sort of a 1 mile run type fitness. I'm think I would do pretty well at that right now. So it's been a great thing. I never thought like I would be into kettlebells at all. It just seemed like such a hardcore kind of thing. It just, I don't know. I just imagine like sawdust gyms and like just all this clanging iron around. It just never was not my thing, but maybe that's why it's been so interesting. I think maybe it's kind of what I needed. Like I was in this fitness rut because I had done I just done enough of it. I'd done the weight training and it was fun and I did it, but I knew what it was. Somehow kettlebells was like this new unexplored thing. And in some way, I think that's like what's always been attractive to me about sports. Like that was why the qualifying for Boston, it was like, that was just an impossible goal when I missed it by 104 minutes. It just seemed unthinkable that I could actually get myself to do it. And then same with 100 miler. Like the first time I heard people run 100 miles, I thought it was a typo. I was reading an article and I literally thought they must have meant 10 miles because I didn't think you could run 100 miles. So then once I just got this sense of like, wow, like what, like normal people do that you don't have to be superhuman to do it. You just have to put the training in. And I was like, wow. So I guess I really like doing things where it just seems like something that is not me, not my personality. Basically it seems like it's impossible for me to do. And something about those things attracts me. And, especially the ones where you learn it is possible and it doesn't take genetics or giftedness. It just takes work. And that's, I don't know. I always take really valuable lessons from those kinds of things.
Okay. So I know you said not superhuman, but anybody who can run 100 miles in my eyes, you're a little bit superhuman. Just saying.
I know it's tempting to say that and believe it. I don't believe it though. I really think I think I was in not as good physical shape when I ran my 100 miler as when I qualified for Boston. I just got better at not quitting. Like that was really all it was. Like I could endure more. That's why they're endurance sports. It is enduring pain. The pace was very slow. I think, my average pace for the whole day, it was a 28-hour race. I think it was I started out at like a 13, 14-minute pace, but by the end I was, my average, I think was probably 17 minutes, and it was on like hiking up and down hills. It was pretty serious stuff. Not like a West Coast one, but still for me, a lot of ups and downs. It was in Ohio actually, which doesn't sound very hilly, but there was plenty of hills. And so I don't know, I think once you put it in that perspective, 17 minutes per mile, you can imagine going for a pretty long time at that pace. And so I actually think maybe not everyone can do 100 miler, but I think a whole lot more people than believe that they can. It's just a matter of like David Goggins, the famous ultra runner. And I think he's a former Navy SEAL or special ops or something. Yeah. He says that when people think they are really completely spent, they've typically used about 40% of their actual capacity to keep going. And that's just such an amazing figure. It's less than half. And that's just his guess. No one knows what that actually is. But I think that's true. I really think we have the sense that we can do so much, but once you can learn to push that limit just a little bit, you realize that you can keep pushing that limit and you can then basically train your brain to not quit. More than training your body perhaps. And I think for me, that's the type of ultra running that I was doing, where I'm not talking about trying to win 100 miles, just do it. I really think it was about that. It was about learning how to be good at not quitting.
Well, you talk about this a little bit in the book and mindset and the belief in yourself. And can you talk to willpower? I have my take on willpower, because when you're saying, you got to be consistent, you got to just keep going, you got to, work hard. Most people have trouble with that consistency. They'll get started and then drop off, fall off the wagon or whatever. Right. And say, what's wrong with me? I don't have enough willpower. Yeah.
So I think that is a big fallacy that people have. I don't believe that willpower is something that you have or you don't. I think it's something first of all, it's something to be treated very carefully. You don't want to exhaust your willpower. And so to me, so many people, when they think they don't have willpower, it's just because they start off way too big with whatever they're doing. And the opposite of willpower is, the automation or the, the habit, basically the thing that happens automatically. You just go do it. And it if you're a year into a running streak, my wife is now 400 some days into a running streak. She doesn't have to use willpower to go get herself out the door like she did in some of those first few runs. And nowadays she'll go out and run, 8 and 10 miles on certain days. But in the beginning, she was running just a mile because that's all she could kind of handle. And had she tried to tell herself that she had, because she used to be a marathoner way long before all this, had she tried to tell herself back then that you have to start by, doing 5 and 7 and 10 mile runs like you used to, she wouldn't. Like that would completely wear out what willpower you have at that point. So it's, the muscle, the metaphor of willpower being like a muscle, this thing that you can train and you can make it get better. But if you completely burn it out and basically injure yourself the way you would in the gym, by doing too much, and if you do that, if you let that happen before the habit force has sort of taken over, then you're gonna fail. And that's I don't know. So I think of it like as building a habit is kind of like a race between like, can you build this as a habit before your willpower that's going to get you through the initial part runs out? And by being really careful and taking the smallest possible first steps and having this longer time horizon. And this is what I was talking about earlier with this, like having a goal that's to be in a great place 10 years from now, rather than saying I have to do this and this and this by 3 months from now or 6 months from now. It gives you this patience to be okay with not experiencing like major results in the beginning, because you're experiencing results. It's just that they're not visible in a physical sense but they're in your head. Because you're starting to learn to trust yourself, and you're starting to keep the promises you make to yourself. And you're starting to learn that, like, yes, I can do a 20-minute workout, and I can do that even when I don't really feel like it. And so that is willpower in a sense, but for me, it's more kind of just training yourself that you can keep these little promises to yourself. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's my willpower in a nutshell. But yeah, I don't think, to me, willpower, like, it's something you can grow and strengthen and get better at. But you absolutely don't need it to like get started with a fitness journey, and you shouldn't be relying on it. If you're relying on it too much, then you're kind of doomed to fail. So like if you feel yourself having to use willpower to do your workout or, eat the way you want, I would say try to do less. Try. Can you make that workout, what is required for success? Can you make that smaller, like really small? And people, I've heard this thing with running. People say like, go run for 5 minutes a day and just do that. And if you find yourself procrastinating on even that, then make it 2 minutes per day. And if that's not working, then it's literally is get your shoes on and get out the door and close the door behind you. And if you want to go in at that point, it's fine. You have succeeded. And because if you string that together and you do 7 of those, you got to imagine that after a little bit, you're going to start, that'll get easier, just to getting your shoes on. And then you're going to say, I'm going to go for a minute right now. And again, it's not a fast process by any means. But I do think that this is the way you build a really, really strong, solid foundation. And for me, like the most visible way that happened was with the transition to a plant-based diet, because it took me probably 4 years to go from completely omnivorous to vegan. And I did it in that way. I spent a whole year with just the no 4-legged animals. And that was really a relatively small first step. Perhaps that's too big of a step for some people who just, they just can't imagine life without beef or pork. And for them, I would say take a smaller step, like just make it so that just breakfast is plant-based. And that's the way you start. And do that for as long as you want until you feel energetic or energized. And now you want to go a little bit further and make it go through lunchtime or whatever. But to me, like if you can go on these small steps, you give yourself all these chances to learn how to do it. Like not just your physical body adjustment, which is part of it. Like that definitely is, like as the bacteria in your gut get a chance to change over to other ones, your body gets more used to the fiber. Like that's an important part. But for me, it was more like the mental side of it, learning how to go to a restaurant and order off of just half of the menu, or pick restaurants that I knew would have good, dishes that weren't 4-legged animals. That was way easier than having to immediately go vegan and have to find a vegan restaurant, which I don't even know if any existed in my town back then. Or have to go to a restaurant and start talking to the waiter about how to make a vegan meal when I barely knew myself how to make a vegan meal and what was vegan and what wasn't. So I don't know. I think if you can take those tiny steps, it really, really eases a lot of the stress, and that stress is what drains that willpower. So I didn't know that then. It was an accident really that I fell into this, but I feel like that transition to plant-based to me, because it took so long, it was just such a solid foundation, and it doesn't feel like any work at all. Whereas I feel like when someone flips the switch and goes overnight, like they don't have a really good chance of making it last. I hope they do. And there are some who do make it last, but like I'd bet my money on someone who has a, 2-month plan to transition rather than overnight.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. I think that's phenomenal advice.
Is that your sense of willpower as well? I'd love to hear what yours is.
Oh yeah. Oh, thanks. Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat as you, and really working with people to create micro commitments to themselves, because we've just learned for so long not to trust ourselves to do what we say we're going to do for ourselves. Though, these are the same people that would never break a commitment to their loved ones or their work, or, they get up and go to work, even if they hate their job. That's not about willpower. That's about making a commitment and sticking to it. But those are commitments on the outside to other people. We've got to learn to trust ourselves and value ourselves enough. And I think for a lot of the people that we work with, especially, it comes down to not valuing yourself enough to keep your own commitment to yourself.
Yep.
And to let other commitments take priority. So yeah, I'm under the same page. And then there's the support aspect, with social media now, there's almost an overwhelming amount of opportunity to get support. And I don't know how people, I'm in how many Facebook groups, and I've got one for, our people. Everyone's got a Facebook group. Everyone's got a business page. There's all this support. How do you pick which support group? And are you going to stick with the support group? It's like,
yeah, right.
Yeah,
it's a great point. I mean, it's when there's too much choice, it really does make it difficult, right? If there was just one, like, this is the healthy support group, it's kind of like cooking a meal. Like, to me, like, if you go in your kitchen and you have 100 cookbooks and the whole internet, and you can't find a recipe because there's just too much. But if you say, we have a ton of zucchini from the farmer's market, I need to find a zucchini recipe, then you can find it. Then you might remember, the 5 that you've had in your life and say, well, I can have one of those. So, like, a lot of times those guardrails or guidelines that limit your choice, they actually make you available to make choice actually available now, because it's not just this blank page. It's like, I don't know, just some bit of guidance. Yeah, no, I'm with you completely. And it's so interesting. A lot of the people I talk to now are like, I've got too much information. I've got information overload. There's so much information about diets, plant-based included, where when we went vegan, I went vegan in 1995. And you and Robert. Yeah, we're very similar. Yeah, right. We're the same age too. Right. Yeah, interesting. So yeah, back then you had to, really actively seek out any information, and now it's just everywhere and it's confusing. So thank goodness for books like yours. And also, I love that it's not about handing somebody a diet plan. It's about helping people create the way of eating that's going to work best for them, their body, their goals, and the flexibility that's there. I love how you talk about that. Can you talk a little bit more about how you incorporate that into the book with the different stories and the day in the life? Yeah, that's a great point. Everybody wants, the 28-day meal plan, or whatever it is, the 1 week sample meal plan. And we included some of that, but I always like to use sample meal plan, because to me, like, I know that those things are useful for sure. Like, that could be your thing, that you commit to a 28-day thing, because it's going to tell you exactly what to do. And it has this sort of built-in commitment to it. That's kind of hard, because it, like, the very nature of, like, saying, on this day I begin and then on this day I end, that implies that you're not taking tiny steps. Like, you're probably taking a big jump to get to that. So to get through 1 week or 2 weeks of that's going to be difficult. And once you get through that, then you can probably make it to the end. And I think that's why the finish line is essential with those sorts of approaches, because at least then you've got, when your willpower does start to wane a little bit, you can at least say, okay, but I'm only 2 weeks from finishing, or 1 week from finishing. This is not the rest of my life. And a lot of times that can give you the strength to keep going. A lot like with ultra running, it's the same idea. Like, I don't know, you realize that, like, it will come to an end if you can just keep going. And often you lie to get yourself and say, I just need to get through today, and then I'll reassess tomorrow, or I'll just get to the next aid station and I'll reassess at that point. And you learn to get actually good at lying to yourself, and then you just keep going. But yeah, like, so I think those are useful, but to me, like I said, it's not really the way that I think permanent change is going to be made. Probably the best use of something like that is that you do it, you complete the plan, and then likely you'll want to go back, take some steps backwards. But then, having experienced it for a while, that means that over the next few months, you may find yourself moving back that direction. So anyway, that's not the direction we took with this. I think, like I said, for people to eat plant-based, I think, and we did write this book, like, it's for people who are plant-based and want to do better by learning from what these top athletes are doing. And there's plenty there for them, because the athletes put their day in the life stories in the back. which is exactly what they eat. Many of them, 25 of them, just from morning until night, including around their workouts. And then they contributed the recipes as well. So there are recipes from these same top athletes. So people who are already plant-based will definitely get a lot of value of it. But so much of the book is, useful education content for someone who has never really, maybe interested in eating plant-based, but has no idea where to begin. And I don't know. I think that's a better place. That's a better way to do it. Like, learn about how you can start to not go vegan or go vegetarian even, but how can you start eating more plants? And to me, that's a very tiny first step of like, eat the same food, but eat a few more plants with it. And that means probably you're going to then eat a few less non-plants because you ate a salad before you ate your lunch or your dinner. And that's going to begin to make change. And I think that's how, to me, like I said, I think how most people in the mainstream, which is who we really want this book to reach, I think that's how they will change with not an intention to go 100% plant-based, but rather just like this idea that, hey, if I ate a little bit less meat and a little bit more plants, I might be able to get some of the results that some of these athletes are getting. And so that's really what we wanted to educate people to do. I wanted to make sure that when they do it, though, they don't just swap out, their hamburger for a Beyond Burger or an Impossible Whopper, because although that is a plant-based food, it's not really gonna. And I guess plant-based is, the definition is, although that's a vegan food, well, many of them, I don't know. It's not the point. That's not what we mean. It may help you to start eating more plants and help making you realize that, hey, I can eat a plant-based meal and it's not the worst thing I've ever had. It's not even that different from what I'm used to eating. But the real point, of course, is to eat the good stuff, the fruits, the vegetables, the beans, nuts and seeds, the whole grains. These are the foods that are going to make a difference to your long-term health, your short-term health. And to me, that's what's going to keep you eating this way. You're going to experience those results, including in your athletic performance, perhaps. And I think a lot of people will get that by way of weight loss, which will happen very often if you start incorporating more plant-based whole foods into your diet, because they're not very calorically dense. So they will fill you up without providing as many calories as it takes to fill yourself up with animal products. And, my hope is that people will get those little bit of results and feel it and notice it, because they'll be looking for it. And then from there, want to go further. And then, from there, use a section in the back that talks about how do you construct a plant-based meal plan using, like some of the recipes in the back, or like, should you include one main dish here, one main option we mentioned, as well as two different sides. Because that's how most people who eat plant-based diets eat. Like, there are a lot of recipes, of course, that are great on Instagram and Pinterest and in books. And I like those. I really actually cook most of the time from those. But most people, like the athletes we talk to, or anyone I talk to, they tend to be sort of like assembling their meals from whole plant ingredients. And honestly, like, you don't need to think about it more than that. If you can enjoy those foods and get yourself to the point where like that tastes great to you, just throwing together a burrito from, brown rice, beans, some tomatoes, some spinach, like assembling a thing. You have to cook almost none of this. I think that's the way most people make this change last. And so it's pretty easy to do. It's like, it would be overwhelming to just, like I said, flip that switch and say, suddenly all my meals have to be assembled this way. But if you can start to incorporate one meal at a time like that, you start to experience a lot of benefits. And you realize that if you bring that to work instead of going out to, KFC or whatever, you feel a lot better later on. And it costs no more than that, for sure, less than that, in fact. And it doesn't take much time to throw it together. There's no cleanup. I mean, it's really simple. So that's why I went with that framework, where it wasn't so much about like recipes in a meal plan, but rather start to put together meals based on these kind of basic principles.
Yeah, I think I didn't realize just how aligned our philosophies are on these sorts of things, Matt. Right now, I'm in the process of creating a 5-week build a meal challenge.
Oh, nice.
And so I have for each week, like how to build a Buddha bowl, or how to build a loaded potato. And then you just keep the ingredients, all these different ingredients, and you just throw them together in 5 minutes.
Yeah, right. So I love that, because like, that's the idea of saying having those guardrails. Like, if you can just say, and not everyone's going to do this, but like, if Monday is your build a burrito night, and then Tuesday is your throw together a stir fry night, and it's all like a theme, and then suddenly like the meal planning and this like, what are we going to eat tonight problem, it's so easy, because it's really easy to imagine what to put in your taco tonight, but it's not easy to say, what are we having for dinner tonight? So I love that kind of concept, that teaching people those blueprints, basically, because that's really what most cooking is. It's not really following recipes, much as that's what seems to get all the glory on social media.
Yeah. And I think making it accessible to everybody is so important, and knowing that you don't need all these fancy ingredients. Right. And the cheapest way to do it is the whole foods. I mean, when I went vegan in 1995, there were no vegan, meats or anything like that. They did come out pretty soon after I went vegan, surprisingly, with a vegan cheese. It tasted like dog do. Oh my God, throw up in your mouth kind of bad taste. Wow. It was so nasty. So you're kind of just forced into eating whole foods, which was like a benefit back then,
right.
But now we're talking about getting in the mainstream and doing what it takes to help people make this, or at least start this transition. And I would like to just finish out with some thoughts on moving the movement forward, because this is really the direction I'm going next in my career. And I'm just finding it so fascinating to be doing all this research on the psychology behind eating meat and the most effective forms of advocacy, and how to bring people together, because there's so much ugliness within the vegan community. And, but I mean, between vegan and plant-based, people with the same goal, and yet what is this, and how do we do this? Because I'm going to literally ask you this because I want your help to make some major changes. And I know I'm going to set myself up to get a lot of shit from those people too, but I don't care at this point. Yeah. It's about the animals. It's not about us for the ethical people. What are your thoughts?
I mean, that's a huge question. I wish I had the answer. I think the answer is probably that, as much as this sounds like a non-answer, like, I think we all need to do our own thing. Like, what is happening is good. We have all these different groups that unfortunately are fighting, and all these different approaches. But I think that's what it's going to take to kind of reach everyone, because everyone's going to find someone whose approach, or story or whatever they just resonate with, and that makes sense to them. Maybe we'll learn that, like I said at the beginning, like, maybe it turns out that at this point in the movement, we're past the part where we need to get a ton of visibility and attention, and rather it needs to be about like making this seem kind of normal, and like just basically normalizing this diet, making it seem not an extreme choice. Maybe that is what is needed next, but I don't know. I think like another interesting angle is the athlete, the fitness angle. Like, what a neat angle that it used to be thought. Robert has mentioned, like, when he went in 1995, went vegan, people were concerned about his health. People were like, how are you going to be a healthy person? And nowadays you have people all the time. I hear someone saying, yeah, I wish I could do that. Like, for my health, I can't, because I can't give up cheese or whatever, but I wish I could be vegan. And that's like such a different story than, like, you're not going to get enough protein and you might die from eating this weird diet. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one of the cool things about our book, that I love, is like getting to showcase all these athletes who are in mainstream sports and people who are literally at the top of their sport world, who are using a diet for performance reasons. Like, that's a new angle, not that new, but certainly in the past, decade, that has only recently started to kind of be visible. And so that's an interesting one. I think, there's the vegan clothing, there's the superstars, celebrities who are going vegan. Like, they're reaching people. Sometimes they change their mind, and then that's not so good. But yeah, at least they're getting exposure. So I don't know. I think kind of a cop out, but I think all these things are happening. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have, to me, like, the fact that we have these fake meats at fast food restaurants now is a huge, huge thing, because it's not healthy food by any means. But if for nothing more than being a sign of how things are going, the fact that, like, those things where they need to have, the food better be selling to be on their menu, that it's happening and it's growing, and more are doing it. Like, that is so indicative of the progress we're making. Now, I don't know, like you said, like, we've lost that inconvenience factor, where this diet used to be so inconvenient that it kind of forced you to eat healthily, because, like, you wouldn't be able to get dinner if you went out to a bar. So instead you would eat ahead of time, and you would eat healthy food, or like on a road trip, you would have to plan for that road trip and make stuff, and you'd have all these good foods. But now it's a little bit easier to just go get the Impossible Whopper or whatever. And I really do wonder, like, about the long-term consequences of that. It's very hard to think that could be a bad thing for the movement. That all these people are able to get these plant-based meals now. I still wonder though, like what happens in 10 years when the studies come out and it's like plant-based diet, it doesn't do all that better than the others, because the plant-based diet they're studying is watered down by so many people who are eating 3 Beyond Burgers a day and calling that their plant-based diet. So that'll be interesting what happens then. And if that will end up being kind of like, if we take this great step forward, then that's going to end up being a big step back where people say, wow, this doesn't actually work like we were told it does. That's going to be a big thing. But at least as an indicator of how the traction we're making, it's a great thing. So, I don't know. And then we've got then there's the whatever it is, the lab grown meat thing. I
was going to ask you that too.
Yeah. I mean, that like, it's not practical yet. I think it's like $1,000 a pound right now for a lab grown steak. And it's like for an ethical vegan, it's not really the answer because it still requires animals to get at the beginning of that process. But I mean, as far as the impact on animals and the impact on the environment, like it's a huge step forward. So who knows? I mean, I don't know. I just think though, like with technology, with the economic forces that are kind of, and environmental factors, like there aren't going to be other choices, I think, in 20 or 30 years. Like it's going to be, we're eating largely plant-based diets because that's what you have to, that's all there is. That's everything else is too expensive. I think we're headed that way. And so I think all of us doing our part is kind of the best thing still. But like I said, I wish I had a better answer than that. I wish I had a strategy that was it. And for me, like my particular strategy is what I said earlier, that like be welcoming, be cool. Like people still, I think, have this expectation that if there's a vegan at the dinner party, they're going to be announcing that they're vegan. They're going to be trying to convert everybody. And I just always have been turned off by that and want to be the one who, surprises someone, that when they make a joke about my diet, I can laugh along with it and maybe make fun of myself too. Some people don't like that approach. Some people think, well, you're missing an opportunity to convince someone. But I'm just not that type of person. I just don't like getting in arguments about whose diet is better. I like to be an example. I like to show that you can do this and not suddenly be so sensitive about your food choices that you get in fights all the time. I like to show that, you can do pretty cool things athletically, physically with a plant-based diet. So it's hard to imagine that be a really good example is not a good strategy. So that's still the one I try to do most.
Yeah, I love that. I wish you had the answer, Matt. I was really, really expecting the answer right now. And I didn't tell you that ahead of time. Yeah, no, I agree in a lot of sense of that. And I, thank you for doing what you've done over all these years. And for this book now to be so in the mainstream is just so exciting. Thank you.
Definitely. Well, the same to you. I'm very appreciative of the work you do and so glad that you're doing it. So thank you. And thanks to anybody else who wants to do the same.
All right, but I'm not letting you go quite yet. I got 30 more seconds. I got a sprint round. I know you're endurance athlete, but I got a sprint round for you. Okay.
Let's do it.
All right. If you had to pick one whole food and one junk food to eat every day for the next year, what would they be?
Ooh. Mango will be my whole food, and some sort of vegan buffalo chicken wing kind of thing. Those buffalo bites or whatever they are. They're just so good.
Can we add the vegan ranch dressing?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay, good. All right. Kale, cooked or raw?
I think cooked. Yeah, I don't know. I can do a raw kale if it's like mashed up in avocado or, the thing. It's just a little bit too. The wheel. Yeah, I can do it then. And I can do the baby kale salads and all that, but I like cooked kale. I like being able to cook down a whole thing of it into a fist-sized portion and get it all in me that way.
Yes, I like that. Okay. An exercise or type of exercise you actually dread doing, and maybe it's a love-hate relationship.
Squats. I really hate squats. I don't like, I've never liked them. I can do deadlifts. I can be all into that, but having all that weight on your shoulders, I don't know.
Are you doing any squats with the kettlebell?
I do a couple where I hold it in front of me, goblet squats, and somehow they're tolerable because it's not the weight on my shoulders. Yeah. But yeah, when you put whatever 250, 300 pounds on your shoulders and have to squat that up 5 or 10 or 20 times, it's misery.
I hear you. All right, 2 more. If you come back as an animal in your next life, what animal would you choose?
Man, that's a great one. See, the cheetah is always been so cool to me, like the speed of a cheetah. I wouldn't really want to chase things though. And like, I don't want to be a carnivore. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, I don't have a good one. Gorilla's not the gorilla's a good example, right?
Yeah.
I can be an example that way.
Okay, fair enough. All right, last one. You have a lunch date tomorrow. Who is it with? And you can include anybody who's alive or dead.
I'd probably pick Seth Godin. You know him?
Mm-hmm, I do.
He's an author. He used to write about marketing. Now his writing is more about kind of art in his broad sense, and that includes what we're doing. In his idea is art. Making your impact on the world, picking yourself. He's just been, I don't know. It's just he just has such a good message. And I had the privilege of spending a week with him in his office like 10 years ago or something. Maybe it wasn't that long. Maybe it was like 7 years ago. But but he's just such a great mentor, and like I just feel so good being around him and learning from him and soaking up what he has to say. So I don't know. I would still pick that, even though I've already spent a week with him. I would do it again.
Awesome.
For a lunch.
Love it. All right, now I will let you go.
All right.
Thank you so much, Matt. It was.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.